This video is sponsored by Wing Technology, your ultimate flight sim hardware solution, featuring the Orion hull test, current and future configurations.
Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. Today we're in the Mi-24P Hind, and we're looking at approach and landing, or landings. First, let's look at the official documents. The approach is always going to be the shallow descent. From the shallow descent, we can either transition to vertical descent and landing, or running landing. So, a shallow descent should be performed from a maximum 3,000 meters, about 9,000 feet. We should maintain 140 to 150 kph airspeed. Our VVI, that's our vertical velocity, should be 5 to 7 meters per second. Our rotor RPM should be 95% plus or minus 2%. And first we'll look at the running landing. This is to be used when there is insufficient power for vertical landing and we have the space available. The descent will be 130 to 70 kilometers an hour. 80 will be ideal. At 50 meters altitude AGL, and less than 150 kilometers an hour obviously. Lower the landing gear and start a pitch up to slow down with a VVI of around 3 meters per second. At 40 to 50 meters, maintain VVI of around 3 meters a second. At 3 to 4 meters AGL, so almost touching down, airspeed should further reduce to around 50 kilometers an hour and not exceed 80 kilometers an hour, with a VVI of 0.5 meters per second. Smoothly land first on the main wheels, reduce collective pitch to 6 to 8 degrees. Apply wheel brakes smoothly. Do not input aft cyclic as we may tip the ship backwards and create tail strike. Once stopped, neutralize the cyclic and the collective to a minimum. Next, instrumentation. We're just going to look at the things that we really need for this descent. Most importantly is going to be our VVI, our vertical velocity indicator. It's always going to be in the negative. Even if we talk about positive, we mean obviously in the negative or the descent. It's measured in meters per second. Next is our airspeed. Here is our airspeed in tens of kilometers per hour. Next, altitude, AGL, radio altimeter in meters. We've got our rotor RPM here, but essentially once it's set at 95%, it's going to stay at 95%, and I'm not going to worry about it too much. And finally, symbology. At the top left, you can see my cyclic, left and right, forward and aft. My rudder pedal, middle, left, right. My collective, up, down. The throttle, as you know, will stay the same. Rather than me trying to explain these movements, please use that symbology. Are you ready, RC?
Ready.
3, 2, 1, off we go. And we're off. So, first of all, let's achieve the parameters of our shallow descent. So, let's think about getting to a forward motion, IAS of around 140 to 150, and a sync rate of about 5 to 7 meters per second. Obviously, you wouldn't do this in formation, by the way. You know, it's just, I don't know, what we do for some reason. Now, as we get closer to the runway, we're very slowly going to interpolate from this glide slope, if that's the right word, to the next stage, which would be 3 meters per second, and slowing the speed very slowly until we end up around 80 kilometers an hour above the runway. But we want to do that very carefully, and if anything, we want to stay on the fast side rather than the slow side. It's very easy to lose the forward momentum of this aircraft, and it can be a bit hard to get going again and awkward. So my advice is to keep slightly faster than you think you need to be, just fractionally, just a 10 to 20 kilometers an hour. You're going to start to see the speed just drain off slightly. See the VVI just drain off a bit, not quite yet, but soon. Down to about 130 kilometers an hour here. Quick check of the altimeter, 100 meters or thereabouts. Starting to think about my slip angle now because we're getting lower. We're at 100 kph, so we certainly don't want to go any slower at the moment. All otherwise looks well. Our VSI is going to start sliding towards the 3 meters per second as the next stage, which is pretty much where we're at actually. Yeah, there he goes. And the key now, like I said, is to keep that forward motion. What we don't want to do is kind of stall the chopper above the runway. I know you can't literally stall it, but you know what I mean. Oops. Keep going. Thinking about our slip angle very much now, so a lot of rudder work to do now. Okay. Got to bias a slight bit of right cyclic here as well. Very low amount of VSI here. I've missed the centre of the runway, but you know I'm just not that good at the end of the day. Dabbing the brake, so I'm controlling with the rudder and dabbing the brake. I've only got a binary brake, so I have to pumpy. But that there, although not perfect, shows the basics of what we need to do once we're completely stopped. And I'm neutralising my cyclic, neutralising my collective. Then proceed to taxi. Next, let's talk about the vertical descent, where it gets a bit more difficult. This is obviously to be used where there is limited area or there are obstacles around the landing zone. In our case, we've got a tiny little pad we're going to try and land on at the threshold of Batumi. For the procedure, beginning at 200 meters down to 20 meters, do not exceed a VVI of more than 3 meters a second. That's very important because any more we risk VRS, vortex ring state, which is absolutely lethal in pretty much any helicopter. At 50 meters, lower the landing gear. Next, between 10 and 20 meters, maintain 3 meters per second VVI. Below 10 meters, slow to 2 meters per second and touch down at almost nothing, basically 0.2 meters per second. Now, it's lovely looking at these figures, and that's great, and yes, we should try and achieve them, but we are not robots, and it's important to point out that these procedures are dynamic. You may need to adjust them on the fly. No two approaches are exactly the same. So, for instance, let's say we go in, we are 50 feet altitude, we put our gear out, suddenly we realise we're slightly out of position in terms of lateral position from the landing zone, and we realise we may have to pause our descent, in which case we can arrest our VVI to 0, move into position laterally, and then 10-20 seconds later continue. So please treat these dynamically. Okay, let's get level, get that rudder neutralised because it's in a funny place. So VVI, at the same time try not to run into RC would be an excellent idea. Down on the collective, let's get it. Okay, there we are. We're a little faster off the collective and pitch up just a touch. We're now VVI good, but we're a little fast at 160, so that's just a bit more off stick, a bit more off the collective. Just get rid of a chunk of that speed. There we are. We're on speed and we're on VVI now on sync rate, which is nice. Stay in that bracket there. I'm tempted to do an external view to show off, but I'm not going to. Because I know that really works.
You can always do it in a track.
I can always do it in a track. It rarely ends well with helicopter approaches. Anyway, so speed is good. Tiny bit of downstick, tiny bit more collective. Keep within parameters. Quick check at the radar out, and we've got 300 meters, so we're getting close. Slightly under speed. Let's get that back in. Back in there. 300 meters.
Arresting the
yeah, we'll arrest our descent to 3 meters per
slow,
second.
I should say, slow the descent.
Slow the descent, right.
Okay.
I'm hitting 200 meters in 3, 2, 1. 200 meters. Slow the descent to 3 meters per second. Speed's not too important now. In fact, we're going to transition to hover, which is pretty much the most dangerous thing you can do in a helicopter. Now, longitudinally, it doesn't matter if I shoot past, that's fine. What matters now is the VVI, and that's all that really matters, and not hitting RC. So, keep that VVI at 3, certainly not exceeding 3 meters per second. Obviously, the speed's going to drop as we transition to hover. As we transition to hover, the likelihood of VRS vortex ring state increases, and that's where we've got to be careful. The best way to avoid that is, of course, keeping our VVI, the eye on our VVI, keeping it static, not letting it to drop down below 3 meters per second. A quick view at the radar out. We are not at gear down speed yet. I'm going to halt my descent right now because I'm too far away from the landing zone, concentrating on too much. So I'm collective on, and this is what I say about you've got to be dynamic. What if there's, you know, for some reason we can't just go straight down like here? Holding my descent, and I'm moving back towards RC here. Anything. There we go. Okay, now we can think about the descent again. Our gear should already be down, by the way. Yeah, not sure if I said that or not. Right.
Alright.
At 10.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. At 10 meters and less, we're going to be a maximum of 2 meters per second on the VVI. I'll pause again, because I need to move longitudinally over. So pausing the descent, hovering. Okay, now it's just a case of edging it down incredibly slowly, 0.2 meters per second. Of course, you can't judge 0.2. It's just to explain that you're meant to go extremely slow at this point. I'm also going to have some slight aft and right cyclic bias, as you can hopefully see. Can you check my wheels are on, RC?
Yep, very good.
Right, I'm going to come
Don't get
down
too
now.
much closer.
No. Not really designed to fit, are they? Brake
Okay,
on.
keep your stick in spot in place, or
Roger.
trim it, and it won't tip over.
Watch up. And parking.
brake on.
Sorry, a lot happening at once there. I'm just going to pause this and we can talk about that. If you look at my cyclic, I'm trimmed slightly down and right here, which is, of course, the takeoff position. Of course, that's how the helicopter bias is, and that's how we want to end this landing. Otherwise, this chopper is so powerful, it can just blow itself over to the left if I was neutral cyclic at the moment. Secondly, as soon as I got down, I hammered on the brakes. And then once I was happy that I was not moving, I was off the brakes and I was back onto the parking brake. So that's our example of the two landings. I hope that was useful and see you later.